Hey, everybody, welcome back to the next exciting chapter of Cliffhanger, the serial talk show. Today, we're going to be talking about Radar Men from the Moon, starring George Wallace as Commando Cody.
Meet Commando Cody, Sky Marshal of the Universe. He's the new screen sensation everybody's cheering in Republic's serial thriller, Radar Men from the Moon. When the Moon Monsters, under the direction of Rettig, ruthless dictator of the Moon, scheme to invade the Earth.
And have your ray gun set up ready to blast them. This time you must not fail.
Yes, Your Excellency.
The nations of the world appeal to Commando Cody, Sky Marshal of the Universe.
Cody and his assistants must be destroyed.
Okay, we'll go back to town and get them.
First to see an actual invasion from the moon. In Republic's Radar Men from the Moon.
Now, you may not know it, but Commando Cody probably influenced something that you like. If you're a science fiction fan, if you're an adventure fan, I'm pretty sure that Commando Cody has some kind of influence on something that you enjoy. I'm Kendall Fontenot, and with me, as always, is Patrick Bennett. How you doing, Patrick?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Commando Cody, Radar Men from the Moon, 1952.
12-chapter Republic serial.
Yes, sir. 12 chapters. How did you like it?
Man, if I was a kid, I think this was the serial that I would have been running to the theater to see. I mean, it had everything that little 9-year-old boy in me would want to see on the big screen, and then go outside afterwards and play. It was fantastic, man.
Yep, it was real fun. I enjoyed this one. This is probably one of my favorites.
Mine too, I agree.
And I think it's funny because a lot of critics didn't really care for it when it came out. And but to me, it's like you said, it's got everything in it.
It does.
Everything that a kid would enjoy. It's got action. It's got a flying man. I mean, any movie with a flying man in it's going to be cool. It's got villains from the moon. It's got the Lone Ranger. He's not the Lone Ranger, but Clayton Moore is in it. I mean, it's got a little bit of everything, and great special effects. Really good special effects.
Yeah, thanks to the Lidecker brothers and their team over at Republic.
And this was just one of a number of Rocket Men type movies.
Right.
There were a few of them.
It was the first Commando Cody film.
Yes, it's the first Commando Cody film, and Republic in the credits in the opening sequence they list him as a new character, Commando Cody, right. And that's because they had the King of the Rocket Men come out prior to that,
right?
And they wanted to differentiate the two characters. And Commando Cody, though, maybe it's because of the name, but Commando Cody seems to be the one that gets talked about the most out of all of them.
That's a cool name.
Yeah, yep. And he was portrayed by George Wallace,
right?
And Wallace was known as a stage performer. He was, from what I've read about him, he was actually an extremely good singer. And he would sing, and he was a song and dance man on stage. And he appeared in quite a few films and television series even over the years. As a matter of fact, one of his last roles which I found out today, he was on an episode of King of Queens.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he passed away in 2005, and the episode was shot in 2003. So now I'm gonna have to dig up that episode of King of Queens. I mean, King of Queens is on every night on, I think, TV Land or TV, one of those channels. And so I'm gonna have to find out which episode he was in just to see, because it was one of his last roles. He was also in Forbidden Planet with Leslie Nielsen. He played the bosun in that one, and it wasn't a very big role, but I mean, that's if you're a fan of science fiction, classic science fiction films, you've seen the Forbidden Planet. If you haven't seen the Forbidden Planet, you need to see the Forbidden Planet. But yeah, Commando Cody. I keep saying Commando Cody, but it's Radar Men from the Moon.
Right. I know what you mean.
It was loaded with actors who starred in multiple Republic serials. William Blakewell. I'm going to run through some of them. Peter Bracco. I already mentioned Clayton Moore, but he's not really known for being in Republic serials. There's Bob Stevenson, Aileen Town, and then Roy Barcroft. Roy Barcroft,
Reddick, Ruler of the Moon.
He was also in a couple of the Flash Gordon serials too.
Dude, Roy Barcroft was the #1 bad guy of these decades. You know, he showed up in everything. In fact, I had a note, just for Republic pictures alone, he has 300 credits. That's just for Republic. He's done other stuff besides that. That is crazy, man. John Wayne doesn't have that many credits.
Right, and I mean, Barcroft was a big, imposing guy.
Oh yeah, he was known as King of the Bad Guys. I think Leonard Maltin gave him that title. But man, when I was growing up, watching westerns and serials and other movies with my dad would always point out Roy Barcroft. That was his favorite bad guy, you know. And I've picked up on that over the years. I can recognize him now when he shows up. But love him, great guy.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, hey, I got a Roy Barcroft story that I read in an interview with him. Said that when he first found out that he was going to be making a serial, I think it was the Purple Monster Strikes. He knew he was going to have to wear tights as the villain, and so he wanted to lose weight. He didn't want to wear those tights. So I heard that he lived only like a mile from Republic Pictures studios where they shot. So he started jogging to work and back every day. And they said within a month, he lost 30 pounds. But he was ready to put on those tights, you know. And it's funny because those tights were from that serial were reused on him in this one. They reused a lot of stuff in here to save money on their budget. I want to say Republic made 4 or 5 serials that year, and this had the highest budget of those 5.
Yeah, it was like what, 180 something thousand?
Yeah, it was pretty for back then. That was pretty high.
And that was a lot of money. Yeah. And the director, Brannon, what's his first name? Fred C. Brannon. He directed quite a few serials for Republic, including most of the Rocket Men serials, including Zombies of the Stratosphere and Commando Cody, Sky Marshal of the Universe. Now, the Sky Marshal of the Universe, he didn't direct all the episodes, but he directed a lot of them. And I just the story, that the character, or not so much the character, the suit is really what makes the serial so great. I mean, Commando Cody is great, but in the other ones they changed the name a little bit. But to see that Rocket Man suit, that's a classic look. And anytime you see any kind of documentary about classic science fiction, you're almost guaranteed to see one of the Rocket Men costumes in that episode, that documentary or whatever.
You know, we're talking about the budget to save money. They were really tight on this budget. They reused a lot of the flying sequences when Rocket Man, you know, when Commando Cody jumps in the air, that mannequin you see flying across, they reused footage from King of the Rocket Men. They also used other footage, like the moon tank. That was taken from Undersea King, and they repainted it, reused the same tank. A lot of the costumes, like I was talking about, were reused. Stuntmen, like we were talking on another episode here, how Republic would reuse stuntmen and actors a lot, not even in the same serial, but in the same scenes. Like say a Western, you might shoot a cowboy and he falls down, and then the hero turns this way, cut. They pick that guy up, change his hat, slap a mustache on him, have him come around from the other direction. Action. Now they're shooting at him again. You know, they reused a lot of their same people over and over. That helped them save a lot of money. But one problem they had, they couldn't afford all the stars to have their own stuntmen. So like George Wallace and them were doing their own stunts. And I read that George Wallace got his nose broken while he was in a fight scene with Clayton Moore.
Yeah, the Lone Ranger broke his nose.
Yeah, it was cheap. This serial was cheap, and I'm not cheap to make. It was they were cheap in paying people and what they used.
Right.
And, worked some long days on it, but it turned out to me it was fantastic.
Yeah, even like Commando Cody's office was actually a Republic Pictures office, and they just slapped that Cody with the little stylized Cody on it to make it his office. And I loved how Graber and Daly, which that was Clayton Moore and Bob Stevenson, the two primary henchmen in the film, in the serial. I mean, I loved how they were always scheming to catch Commando Cody or to kill Commando Cody, or even his associates. And I enjoyed watching them. It was kind of unique in that Barcroft, for the entire serial, with the exception of the last couple episodes, he was on the moon. And he had Peter Bracco, who played Krog. He had Krog directing traffic on Earth with all the human allies that they had, so that they wanted to take over the Earth. For those of you who've never seen this serial, Radar Men from the Moon, what happens is that there's all these mishaps all over the world. Radio towers start to fall, places are destroyed, and they don't know who's doing it. And Commando Cody, he's a scientist who has developed this rocket, this flying suit, and he's also got a rocket that he can take to the moon. And they find out that Reddick, the ruler of the moon, is planning to take over Earth. And they've learned how to use English so that they could speak and interact with the humans here on Earth, in the United States at least. And they were using this ray gun to destroy everything. And they had this substance called luminarium, this element called luminarium that they would use to create the laser, I guess, or the ray coming out of the ray gun. And a lot of the serial deals with Cody going to try to destroy or steal the ray gun, and then he goes to the moon and tries to get some luminarium to bring it back to Earth so that they can make their own ray gun. And the henchmen try to stop him, basically. The main bad guys stay, like Krog stays in a hidden cave, and Reddick is on the moon most of the time. But it's a slick looking, at least in my opinion, it's a slick looking serial.
It was. Those spaceships, man, these were better than the Flash Gordon ships. Just the look, and with all that smoke coming out the back of them, the Lydeckers, they just did a fantastic job.
And like the flying sequences where they had a close up on George Wallace, looked real good, and you couldn't see the cables, like with the flying with the rockets and stuff. The rocket ship, you couldn't really see the cable going.
masked madmen bent on world domination. See weird scientific machines. See the gigantic killer robot.
Good heavens. What on earth is it? No! Get it away! No! Ah! My hand! No! No! Stay back! Get away! Back, you iron devil!
See the rocket-powered marvel of the age. You'll believe a man can fly.
Wow! Hey, Dad, guess what?
Don't miss a single pulse-pounding chapter of 30-Second Doom. Coming soon to this theater, 30-Second Doom.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have a very special guest with us today, Mr. Gary Hughes, creator of 30-Second Doom, a modern serial. Gary, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Patrick.
Yeah, Gary, you want to tell us what your serial's about? 30-Second Doom. Kind of give us a little synopsis.
Yeah, I'll give you the thumbnail. It's basically an homage to the Commando Cody Rocketman serials. Back in 2004, I actually made a replica flying suit. Once it was done, my brother and I said, well, what are we going to do with this thing? So we decided to go ahead and have a shot at 30-Second Doom. It is based on the flying suit serials, but we borrowed a lot of elements from several of our favorite Republic serials, Mysterious Dr. Satan and Spy Smasher and Captain Marvel. And one of the things that we tried to do on a very limited budget was recreate some of the visual effects that Republic used back in the heyday. So we kind of focused on that. It's a very low budget effort. It's essentially a home movie on steroids, but we just had a blast putting it together. So,
yeah, you're talking about the effects that you recreated, those Lidecker type effects. They looked amazing. You did a great job.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we put on the Calcasieu Cereal Fest here in Lake Charles, well, in Sulphur, Louisiana, actually, right outside Lake Charles. But a couple of years ago, your friend Don Michaels sent us a DVD and asked us if we would screen a couple of chapters, and we did to our audience, and everybody loved it.
Oh, excellent! That's always good to hear, man.
Yeah,
makes
so
those long nights in front of the computer editing worthwhile.
So how many chapters is the serial?
Here's the rub. We originally were going to do 4 chapters, and I got 3 in the can, and then life kind of happened. We all got busy, and it got tougher and tougher to budget time to not only shoot pickup shots and things like that, but to do the editing, and that's by far the most time-consuming element of doing it. If you've done any film work, you know exactly what I'm talking about, man. So, but we do have 3 complete chapters in the can. I have the 4th one shot, essentially. It's just a matter of editing it. And one of the rubs is there's a recap chapter, an economy chapter. So I've got to go back and pull footage from 2004, and I've got everything on mini DV tape here in the office. But it's just it's a time thing more than anything.
Right.
So.
Yeah, about eight or 9 years ago, I started shooting my own serial called The Adventures of Gorilla Bob. And I know exactly what you're talking about. I've got 1 chapter complete. I've got 2 more that I can edit now and complete if I could ever get around to it.
Right.
As far as shooting the rest, my actors are scattered. So we're in Louisiana. Our girl is now in Texas. One of the guys, he went up, I think he went to Hawaii for a while. I don't know where he's at now, but everybody's just scattered. And we have a couple of people actually passed away. I mean, this has been 9 years. So I don't know if I'll ever finish it. I wish I could, because when I jumped into it, I was putting everything into it, and I hate to just leave it unfinished, But I thought about rewriting the script a little and trying to make some changes to where I can make, put new actors in it and stuff.
You know what you could do? And this is just a thought. You could go the route of Republic Pictures with their Century 66 stuff. And what they did was they took a 12-chapter cliffhanger and edit it down into a quote-unquote feature film. But essentially all they did was eject the cliffhangers, you know.
They did that with Radar Men from the Moon. They made a 100-minute feature called Reddick, the Moon Menace.
Yeah.
You lose so much.
Yeah, well, in fact, a lot of cats my age, a lot of baby boomers, that was our first introduction to the serials in general, was when they packaged them for television via Century 66. And I always wondered the first time I saw one of those, was like, what's not going on here? What am I missing? And come to find out years later that, well, there's no cliffhangers on there. But I'll tell you, man, I don't know what your first exposure to serials was, but for me, when I was a little guy, we had a afternoon TV host in Sacramento called Captain Sacto, and it was cartoons and contests and the whole thing. Well, every day after school, he would show a chapter of a Republic serial, and it was a lot of later stuff, The Invisible Monster, and you mentioned Radar Men from the Moon and Zombies from the Stratosphere. So it wasn't really Golden Age stuff, but as soon as I saw those, I was hooked, and I can remember vividly hauling it home just so I could be there on time for the next installment, because it was a daily thing. So huge influence.
I know Kendall and I, we talked about this before. We were watching serials on the PBS. On, what was the name of it, Kendall?
It was Matinee at the Bijou.
Yeah,
with I don't recall the name of the guy.
Yeah, he wore glasses.
Yeah, he was a movie critic, actually.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a few of those recorded, and they're fun because it gives you a little background. And I think you watch them bang, 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 chapter after chapter, don't you? I don't recall. It's been a while since I've seen those, but
I was born in the late '60s, so it wasn't until the '70s when I was introduced by my dad to serials, and we'd watch westerns and serials and just old movies, like old Universal horror stuff.
Yeah.
So that's how I got serials.
Yeah, then too, around that time you mentioned the early '70s. That's when a lot of TV horror hosts were getting popular too, and you would see a lot of that, like you mentioned, the Universal stuff, but also they'd throw in a chapter or two of a serial. The guy we had here in the out of the Bay Area, Sacramento area, was named Bob Wilkins, and every Saturday night he had a show called Creature Features. And one of the things that he did, in addition to showing, A and B and C and below movies, he would show amateur films. And so my brother and I started watching these and got hooked on the idea. So went down to Saul Anapolsky's pawn shop in downtown San Jose and got a used Super 8 camera and just started shooting. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So were you a reader of Cinemagic magazine?
Yeah, Cinemagic, Famous Monsters, Cinefex, Screen Thrills Illustrated, Mad Magazine, all that stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, look, tell me, in 30 Second Doom, you played Steve Bennett. Was this a homage to Spencer Bennett?
The name we pulled out of the hat, and yeah, that's basically what it was. But it's kind of the generic every man's hero kind of thing. I mean, I'm a huge Republic serial guy. That's my favorite.
Right.
And so we kind of patterned it after that. And he's not a direct homage to any one serial hero. We use Spencer Bennett because of Spencer Bennett, as you mentioned. But I mean, there's dialogue that we borrowed that popped up in all different kinds of serials over and over again. So, yeah. But yeah, in fact, our heroine's name was Gail Sterling, which is a direct homage to Linda Sterling.
Linda Sterling. Right. Yeah. We were just talking earlier about Zardo's Black Whip.
Yeah.
Tiger Woman.
Yeah.
Tiger Woman.
I'll tell you what, man. I had a terrible crush on her when I was a kid. It was awful. I thought she was just an absolute doll. So
that's my favorite serial actress of all time.
Pretty much, yeah. And I don't know if you have ever seen an amateur serial film. I believe it was done in the late '60s by a guy named Alan Barber. And Bob Miller kind of collaborated on it, and it's called Captain Celluloid versus Film Pirates. As soon as my brother and I saw that, I got a copy on VHS off of eBay. As soon as we watched the 4 chapters, it was like a light went off, and it says, we have to make a serial. We have to have a go at this, you know. So like I mentioned before, I had the flying suit finished already. And we gathered some friends together and got a few costumes and a green screen and a hoist and a rock climbing harness and just went for it,
man. Hey, I noticed in your cast you had Don Coleman.
Yes.
Is the same Don Coleman that worked in Hollywood on effects and props and stuff?
He did, yeah. Don has worked on a lot of films, and he worked for Paramount. He did a lot of work on Star Trek Next Generation, and he also did the chest piece and the rocket pack for the Star Trek Voyager Captain Proton episode.
Captain Proton.
I don't know if you've ever seen those or not.
Oh, yeah.
Just great fun, man. Great
Yesterday,
fun.
I ordered that little ship that Eagle Moss put out for Captain Proton.
Oh.
Yeah, I just ordered it off eBay. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But I mean, they had it down to the robot, the big levers and gears, the ray guns. I mean, it was just they did a super good job on it. So.
Well, that's great. So did he build your costume for this serial?
The way that I got mine, I'll make a long story longer, if I may. They used Don's rocket pack, and he had a casting of an original Commando Cody Hero helmet, and went back to a company, I believe in Wisconsin, called Acme Designs, and they made molds off those. And so they molded the helmet and they molded the rocket pack, and I was fortunate enough to get mine from Clint in kit form. So I took the parts, cut them out, built them, painted them, put the headliner in it, used Don's rocket pack, and had a friend of mine machine the chest piece out of metal, and Don gave me some of the original Heathkit knobs that were used on there. So the whole process, I would say, between the research and the actual construction probably took about 4 years. But it is the coolest, man. It's the favorite thing. It's my favorite thing I have in my collection. I still love it. So
I know we're too old to have experienced the serials every week in the movie theater. You know,
right?
I know my dad tells me stories, but man, I think I was born in the wrong era. That would have been right up my alley, going every week and watching, you know, Rocket Man and stuff like that at the theater on the big screen.
I hear you, man. And again, I think a lot of it, what you mentioned earlier, it goes back to what your dad liked. And, you know, my mom and dad were both noir fans, and my dad liked classic horror and Universal stuff. And so I'm kind of in the same boat as you are, man. I feel like the stuff that I love, the stuff in my wheelhouse, as far as movies and things like that, all happened long before I was even born. So, yeah.
Talk about another person that was in your cast, Kurt Clendenin.
Yes.
I'm familiar with Kurt from Max Neptune.
Yes.
I put on the Lake Charles Film Festival here in Louisiana, and one year he sent his film in and we showed it. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Kurt was the actor who played Max Neptune. The film was actually conceived by my buddy John Garside and a couple of his friends, and they put it together. And it's not so much a retro film as it is. It's kind of a spoof of more 70s type science fiction. In fact, if you've seen it, a lot of it would remind you of Sky Captain. It's got that same vibe to it.
Yeah.
He did a ton of green screen work and a ton of visual effects. And the interesting thing, when we were shooting a 30-second Doom, we had some scenes with our giant robot. I don't know if you've seen our robot or not.
Yeah.
But at any rate, John said, well, why don't you come on down and we'll shoot it down here, and I'll get Kurt and some of the other guys to be a part of it. And so we went into the alley behind the hotel I was staying in North Hollywood and shot a bunch of scenes of the robot. And then we went over to the prop house where Don Coleman was working, shot a scene of him getting crushed to death by the robot. And then we finished up and went over and met Bob Burns for the first time and went to his museum. So it was one of those, the date that will live in infamy, man. It just, everything aligned perfectly that day. It just had an absolute blast. And yeah, John, Kurt, all those guys, just super talented. And just a lot of fun to work with. Yeah, we had an absolute ball. So.
Yeah, I missed Bob Burns' TV show. It came from Bob's basement.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the show. I have his book.
Yeah, same title on his book.
Oh, okay. And
Bob's Basement show came on. Remember, there used to be a channel called, I think it was CNET or something like that. It was like a little 30-minute program on there.
Huh. Okay. Like an overview of his collection, or?
Yeah, every episode he'd take you around a different section of his museum.
Oh wow, man, I missed that.
That was really cool.
Yeah, it sounds interesting.
So tell me, Gary, what was your favorite part about making this whole serial?
The flying scenes, hands down. The flying scenes, man. I dig this. We started out. We said, well, we don't have the money to do a full-size flying figure like they did for King of the Rocket Men and later Zombies of the Stratosphere and Radar Men from the Moon. So what we did was we took an action figure and we put together a figure of the Rocket Man. In fact, if you hold on 1 second, I'll get him down off the shelf if you want to take a peek at him.
Yeah.
Okay, give me 1 minute, man. Okay, I don't know if you can see him or not. There he is.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's G.I. Joe size. And so what we did was we went outside and strung parallel fishing lines, just like the Lydecker brothers did, and did some scenes of him outside, and they were okay. The problem being he was such a small scale that the flying stuff, even in front of the green screen, just didn't quite cut it. So we said, well, we have our green screen. One of my customers had an electric hoist that he used to pull up his tractor when he was servicing it. So I got a rock climbing harness, put it on backwards so the hook was on my tailbone, put the suit on, hooked everything up to the harness, and then we got a couple of Velcro dog collars and some green fishing line and a piece of PVC pipe, and my brother was off camera and he pulled those lines tight, would pull my arms up, we raised the hoist up, and voila, man, I'm horizontal 6 feet off the ground in front of the green screen. And that's how we did most of our flying scenes.
Nice.
So.
It looked very good on
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah.
It looked great.
So
Yeah,
what did you shoot this serial with?
Well, when we first started, I had an old Sony TRV-39 camcorder, which is essentially a high-end consumer camcorder. And for basic shooting, it was okay, but it had a very small chip in it. So I didn't have the resolution I needed for green screen work. So a few months in, I bit the bullet and bought myself a Panasonic DVX 100A.
Cool.
And we shot the majority of it on that. Now, by today's standards, it's completely outdated because it's standard def and nobody shoots SD anymore. But for its time, it was the #1, what they call a prosumer model camcorder. And we did everything with that. Tripod shots, live action shots, dolly shots, everything. Just great camera, bulletproof, consistently good picture, easy to capture off of. Yeah, worked out really well.
Cool. So let's talk about the water heater robot.
Let's.
How long did that take to make?
Well, probably 6 months because I'd never tried anything like that before. And so what I had to do was put the feelers out to Don Coleman and a guy up north that has a place called a Robot Hut by the name of John Rigg, and kind of pick their brains about what do I use, how do I put it together. And what we came up with was, per John's recommendation, cardboard concrete form tubes. And we had I think it was an 18-inch diameter for the body and some smaller ones for the arms and the legs. And we just skinned it with sheet styrene. And obviously real rivets were out of the question because of the tremendous weight they would add to the costume. So we used 1,300 10mm wiggle eyes, like you have on little stuffed animals and things like that.
Yeah.
And the great thing about that was every time you walked in the robot, it made this clinking sound like somebody with a bag of change shaking it. And of course, they were just super glued on, so almost every scene we'd have to stop, and I always had some spares pre-painted. We'd have to touch it up before we did another scene if we lost some off the arms or the legs or the front. And yeah, we had a backpack frame in there and a little harness, and we had an electric light in the front, just like the Republic version, and a lot of fun. But boy, oh boy, after 30 minutes inside that thing, it was like being in a pressure cooker. Because we filmed in Sacramento in the summer where triple digits are kind of the norm here. So myself, everybody got a turn in it, and everybody paid the price.
Hey, I noticed I did a search of 30-Second Doom and was reading up on it again because I haven't watched it in a couple of years. But I noticed in 2008 you were nominated for a Rondo Hatton Award.
That's possible. That whole era was kind of a blur because it was right around that time, I think, that John was finishing up Max Neptune, and so he had told us we're going to screen it in a theater in Whittier, California, which is kind of a hop, skip, and a jump from LA. And he goes, would you like to have your 30-Second Doom trailer shown? And so I had to cobble something together really quickly. And so at the time I was focused on that. So, yeah, the Rondo, always an honor. It's like it's the award for anybody involved in any kind of amateur monster horror / sci-fi film. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
I love their little statues of Rondo.
Oh, yeah, the man, Rondo Hatton. Yeah, very cool.
I like how on The Rocketeer, how they made that actor look like Rondo.
Actually, in the original graphic novel, that's how Dave Stevens portrayed him. And it's funny because I'm reading the novel, and you see this guy in the shadows, and you flip the page, there's Rondo. So Dave Stevens, another guy who probably born in the wrong era, patterned his heroine after Betty Page, the pinup girl from the 50s. In fact, actually dated Betty Page briefly for a while back in the day, just prior to the Rocketeer film coming out. Into old cars, old films, vintage clothes, a whole bit. Yeah, too bad we lost him. Very, very talented guy. You know, very talented. So.
Yeah, the Rocketeer. I love that film. I like how it was set back in the old days. It wasn't modern. They didn't try to modernize it. I thought it was pretty cool. We should have got a sequel.
Yeah, originally Dave Stevens wanted to do a graphic novel of King of the Rocket Men, but he couldn't get the rights to the character. I believe Artisan had the rights to the Republic stuff then. It changed several times. So what he did was created his own character, which was a hybrid of the Rocket Man and Black Hawk, hence the jodhpurs, the bib front jacket. That's where all that came from. So, but I mean, very obviously derivative of the Rocket Man serials, especially. You know, so.
Yeah, loved it. So, do you have any funny stories you can tell us about producing this serial?
Boy, do I ever. Some of them I probably couldn't relate in this particular get together, but let me think a minute. We were filming in my garage in front of a green screen. We had everything closed up because of the noise, and we had the camera set up in the laundry room, the green screen in the garage, everything buttoned up. It was 105 outside, so I don't know how hot it was in front of the lights. And my buddy Victor Contreras, who played Rayon in the serial, had a line to deliver, and the line was something along the lines of a chemical compound including nitrous oxide. He must have fired 10 different permutations of nitrous oxide before we finally got that one right. So, and I think part of it was just so hot and so miserable. But yeah, as you know, being an amateur filmmaker, things never go exactly the way you predict they will. So
never.
Yeah, it always an adventure. Fortunately, nobody got hurt, you know, which was good. We were very careful with our stunts and so forth. So, but there were a lot of outtakes where, for example, somebody would be walking into an office building and they'd open the glass door towards the camera, and you could see the reflection of the camera in the glass door just before it closed. So just a lot of little things like that, you know.
So, hey, tell me, Gary, what is your favorite serial of all time? You have one?
I do, and people are going to poo-poo this because the acting was, you know, mediocre at best, but that was the case in a lot of them anyway. I like The Masked Marvel. That was a wartime serial, and stuntman Tom Tyler played the Masked Marvel and did a lot of the stunt work. And I think the reason I liked it was, for me, one of the coolest things that Republic did, in addition to their miniature effects, was their fight choreography. And to hear Bill Whitney and some of those guys talk about it back in the day, it was like choreographing a dance. They go through all these various routines, and that one is just nonstop action, and it's got everything. It's got explosions, it's got gunfights, it's got fist fights, it's got a cool character. So there are some great ones. A lot of people will say, and I'm speaking of Republic mostly because that's my favorite. They'll say, well, Spy Smasher, or The Adventures of Captain Marvel, or Mysterious Dr. Satan because of the robot, and so on and so forth. But for me, for some reason, on that rainy Sunday afternoon when I feel like watching a serial, that's usually the first one I grab because I love it, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'll get on my soapbox a minute and just say I'm sure a lot of people that are interested in this stuff are probably kind of also interested in amateur filmmaking. They kind of dovetail together. And the one thing that we tried to do throughout was to make sure that it stayed fun. And as you know, working on films yourself, it can be a ton of work, and not just on location or on front of the green screen, but the editing, so on and so forth. So Anybody who does anything like that or wants to attempt any kind of a project like that, keep it fun, man, because if you're doing it to make money or if you're doing it to become famous, unless you're very well connected and very well talented, you're going to be very disappointed very quickly. So, I'm done with my sermon for the evening.
Where can folks find your serial at?
Actually, it's never been released. You can see a lot of footage on my YouTube channel. If you search Gary Hughes, you'll see a lot of stuff on there. I sent out so many DVDs to friends and people who had requested them. I can't begin to count them, but I kept putting off any release because I didn't finish the final chapter, and so I still have to do that. But if you want a taste of how we did some of our visual effects or some of the robot stuff or anything like that, I'd say the YouTube channel would be the go-to option. So,
okay.
Cool. Well, Gary, man, thanks a lot for your time, for being here with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Oh, this was a blast, man. I'd do this again in a heartbeat.